Solving proportions. Main idea that we want to look at is using proportion to solve everyday problems. Some new vocabulary that we must take under considerations are equivalent ratios, proportion, cross product, constant of proportionality. The key concept is the understanding that a proportion is an equation stating that two ratios or rates are equivalent. And just a minor example here is to look at 6 over 8 is actually equal to 3 over 4. Alright, so before we really get into the explanation of this, let's take a look at how we would write and solve a proportion. Now, I also understand that any two fractions is not a proportion, but we'll show you as we go forward here. So we have a real world situation. It says Melvin can decorate 8 t-shirts in 3 hours. At this rate, write and solve a proportion to find the time it will take him to decorate 20 t-shirts. Okay, so as we look through the problem, we see that he has 8 t-shirts in 3 hours. So let's write shirts. So he has 8 of those. Okay, and we say he can decorate those shirts in 3 hours. So we'll just use T for time here. And 3 hours. Now if you notice, for my first ratio, I have shirts over time. So that means when I look at the second ratio, again, I must put the same format. I can't put times over shirts. I have to put shirts over time. So if I do that, I'm looking at, it tells me 20, but we don't know the time. So we say let T represent the time. So we'll let T represent time. And again, we're talking about shirts, and that's over time. Now, understand this. We could have easily wrote this, and I'm just putting it out here, 3 over 8, but we have to make sure that that's time over shirts. But we must also have put the other one the exact same thing, which now would have been T over 20. And again, you notice I got my time and my shirts exactly one. If one's in the numerator, both have to be in the numerator. One's in the denominator, both have to be in the denominator. So you can write either or as long as you have the actual units in the same denominator or numerator. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're not going to, I just want to put that out there, but we're going to use the first one. So now we have 5 steps. So the first step we say is to write a proportion. So I'm going to go ahead and change this color on this pen so you can see it. This will be probably the longest video. I just want you to be able to take a look. So the first step is to write a proportion. So we will have 8 over 3 is equal to 20 over T. So here, this step, we wrote a proportion. And remember, we say that proportion, again, is an equation that states the two are equal. So if that's the case, 8 over 3 must equal to 20 over T. Okay. The second step is we must find the cross product. So if I take 8 and multiply it times T, I will get 8 times T is equal to, and then 3 and multiply times 20, 3 times 20. Okay, this is called, what I'm doing is finding cross product. Okay, now the next step we have to do is simply multiply. So if you have a number and a variable, I don't care what the variable is, some letter, we just simply, to multiply them together, we use the number as a coefficient, in this case 8 and t, so it just put them together and they becomes 8t, and 3 times 20 would give us 60. So the only thing we did was multiplied the cross products. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is look at what's happening with our variable, because the main thing we're trying to do is find out what is t. So in order to find out what is t, we have to get the inverse of operations that's happening to t. So t is being multiplied, so to get the inverse of multiplication is division. So now we must divide the coefficient by both sides, and the coefficient is 8. So let's go ahead and rewrite this so you can see the steps, and I'll put 8 over t is equal to 60, and I'm going to divide both sides by 8. Again, what we're trying to do is get the actual, so here we'll divide each side by 8. Okay, divide each side by 8. So when we actually divide 8 into 8, that's going to be 1, and that's 1, and 1 over 1 is simply 1t, and 8 goes into 60. So let's go over here, 60 divided by 8, with a decimal here, 8 goes into 60. Oh, so we know that 5 times 8 is 40, plus 6 is 48, and 7 times 8 is 56. So we'll put 7 and our 56, and we have 4 remaining, so we'll bring another 0 down here, and 8 goes here 5 times, and 5 times 8 is 40. So we see that 1t is equal to actually 7.5. And what we can do is, when we have these variables and there's a 1 as a coefficient, we can simply just write that as t is equal to 7.5, and this is called, we just simplify. So what we have is our 5 steps. Step 1, wrote the proportion. Step 2, find the cross product. Step 3, multiply. Step 4, divide by, we're not going to always divide by 8. Whatever the coefficient is, we're going to divide by that, and then simply simplify. And our answer comes out, well, it will take Melvin 7.5 hours to decorate the t-shirt. I'm going to go ahead and write that on there so we'll know what the actual final answer is. So again, just look at the process. So it will take Melvin 7.5 hours, or 7 hours and 30 minutes, 7.5 hours. That is what the question asked us. 7.5 hours to decorate 20 t-shirts. So that's what we're looking for. We've actually looked at a real world problem, and then we took the problem and went over the steps. If you follow these steps, and I know some of you will want to cut these steps off, but just follow these steps and you will get a proportion every single time. And that's not only advantageous, but what it will do is help you just in case we get a question that asks us, where did we go wrong in what particular step. All right, writing, solving proportions.